It's red and pricey. It's a critter and a delicacy. It's the creme de la creme of seafood. But this beloved summertime favorite was once thought of as the poor man's food. Say what? It is said that in the early 16th century, as the first pilgrims began to settle in bay areas of America, that the oceans overfloweth with lobster. No, literally, they overfloweth. Imagine a shore with a lobster wall 2 feet tall. As one would expect, the settlers ate them up, until, like anything eaten 3 times a day, they got sick of them, eventually deeming them the cockroaches of the sea. After that, lobsters were used as fertilizer, fish bait, and ultimately prison food. They were fed so often to inmates that there was even a law enacted to protect said inmates from cruel and unusual lobster punishment. So then how did lobster become the succulent delicacy we all know and love? Fast forward to the mid-1800s. Canned food became a thing, as did the railroad. Lobsters were canned and shipped to Middle America. At the same time, Middle Americans started traveling to New England for fresh lobster. By the late 1880s, prices began to surge, and by World War II, lobsters became the pricey specialty we've all grown to enjoy.
These are nachos. Golden crispy chips, gooey melted cheese, mounds of toppings galore. They are delicious. They're named after a man named Nacho. This was Ignacio Anaya, known to friends and foes alike as Nacho. In 1943, Ignacio was a maitre d' at this restaurant, the Old Victory Club, in Piedras Negras, Mexico, a border town a jalapenos throw from Eagle Pass, Texas, home of Fort Duncan, an army base filled with military men and families. One day, a group of army wives crossed the border. They shopped. They got hungry. They went to the Victory Club. The chef wasn't there. But Ignacio, maitre d', didn't want to turn the women away, so he sprang into action, grabbing tortillas, shredded cheddar cheese, and jalapenos. He put his creation into the oven. Pensively, he served it to the army wives. They loved it. Returning to Texas, they spread the El Evangelio del Nacho, the gospel of the nacho. Nachos Especiales became so adored and renowned, Ignacio opened up his own restaurant, the creatively named Nachos Restaurante.
You probably recognize these ice cream pellets as the ice cream of the future. They're Dippin' Dots, a summertime staple. But this confectionery treat didn't start as, well, ice cream. It started as cow feed. Dippin' Dots were invented in the 80s not by an ice cream brand, but by a microbiologist. Curtis Jones specialized in cryogenics. In 1987, he was working for a biotech company in Kentucky, trying to figure out how to make food for farm animals more efficient. His big breakthrough came when he flash froze cattle feed at 350 degrees below zero, which produced small pellets. Serendipitously, Curtis loved making ice cream. Next thing he knew, he was using liquid nitrogen to freeze ice cream at extremely low temperatures and ended up with small beads of it. When eaten, the natural heat of the mouth melted the beads and thus, Dippin' Dots was born. A year later, he formed the company out of his parents' garage in Illinois. But there was a problem. Curtis had nowhere to sell the product. Dippin' Dots need to be stored at such a cold temperature that it made it impossible for grocery stores to house the tasty treat. So he got creative and marketed his product to alternate locations. Now they're sold at amusement parks, festivals, zoos, and other summertime destinations. But whether or not they really are the ice cream of the future, we'll just have to wait and see.
Chinese Takeout. That convenient hunger buster that can turn up at your door within minutes in a perfectly packaged Chinese Takeout box. Funny thing about that Chinese Takeout box, it's actually American. Yep. Although the box's folds and style were inspired by Japanese origami, the packaging is a uniquely Western invention. In 1894, Chicago-based inventor Frederick Weeks Wilcox patented the paper pail, a single piece of paper folded into a leak-proof container fastened with a wire handle. Around this time, California experienced a huge influx of Chinese immigrants. Many came here in search of gold, bringing along their cuisine and culture. Fast forward to the post-war boom. Every family is moving to the idyllic suburbs, convenience is paramount, and Chinese takeout starts to take off. Then, in the 1970s, a graphic designer added a pagoda to the side of the box, along with a faux Asian "thank you" on top. From then on, the containers became a fixture of the Chinese takeout industry, even though they have never been used in China.
Ketchup. So American, it's basically the red in red, white, and blue, right? And that red clearly is from the tomatoes that ketchup is made from. Yeah. But that wasn't always the case. The first recorded recipe for ketchup comes from China. And for more than 1,000 years, it wasn't even made with tomatoes. It was made with fish guts. Fish intestines, bladder, and stomach all mixed together with salt, then sealed and heated in the hot summer sun for 20 days. That was the original ketchup, a fermented fish paste that dates back to 6th century China. It was popular throughout Southeast Asia, and British and Dutch settlers who arrived in the 1600s loved the stuff. Over time, they brought ketchup home to Europe and added their own modifications, including beer, mushrooms, walnuts, oysters, strawberries, and peaches. By the mid-1700s, English ketchup was a mainstay on British dinner tables, and as colonists went west, it soon made its way across the pond. That's where tomatoes come in. They're native to the Americas, and it's rumored Europeans once believed they were poisonous, but poisonous they were not. In 1812, a Philadelphia horticulturalist and scientist by the name of James Meese introduced tomatoes into the mix. He published a tomato ketchup recipe that was the beginning of a new crimson era. From there, many different iterations were concocted, and by the end of the 18th century, the New York Tribune called tomato ketchup America's national condiment that was on every table in the land. Which brings us back to this. Tomato ketchup is here to stay. And I, for one, don't miss the fish guts.
Salmon sushi isn't Japanese. It's Norwegian. Huh? Sushi. Okay, here's the story. Until about 1995, raw salmon was not consumed in Japan, and this was for one big reason. Pacific salmon has parasites. Ugh. So no salmon sushi, sashimi, no spicy salmon, nothing.
What? No way.
But obviously that all changed, thanks in part to this guy.
Yes, my name is Bjorn Erik Olsen.
Norway had a problem. They had a lot of salmon and too small a market. Looking east, they set their sights on Japan, a country that loves raw fish so much it's willing to pay 5 times the price for sushi grade. So, Norway formed a committee and hired Bjorn.
From 1986 to 1991, I worked for Project Japan.
Their job was to convince Japanese consumers that Atlantic salmon was safe to consume raw. And this was hard. Just take, for example, pork. If some guy from Norway came here and said, "Here, eat our pork meat raw, it's safe, it's really yummy," we'd be like, "Man, you're crazy."
It was basically a matter of perception, so we had to change the whole country in a way.
Bjorn and his team got to work. They made the first ever salmon rolls and served them to businessmen in Japan, which they didn't like for a long time.
It took actually 10 years to get a proper breakthrough in the market.
So there it is. Salmon sushi didn't exist before 1995. Bjorn, on behalf of the world, we thank you.